Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant.
My name is Niels Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. The FP10 negotiation process is moving on, and everybody is waiting patiently for the concrete elements to be settled and revealed. Some more than others. There has been quite some wind and disturbance around the Widening initiative in Horizon Europe. This is the initiative that helps less performing countries in R&D to close the gap to the more well-performing countries. A lot of stakeholders in Eastern and Southern Europe have been helped forward since the initiative was introduced, so when some member states suggested to take it out of the framework program, it caused a stir. Therefore, it is time for a status on the widening in the FP10 negotiations. And the good news is that it looks like it stays in the framework program. I have my normal co-host Thomas Brent in, this time as expert guest, to share what is going on, what is being discussed, and what the Commission has put on the table, and what are the next steps. Please enjoy. Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Now, today is a new episode in the Widening series, but we don't have a guest today. And Thomas, today you're not a co-host, you're more guest because you're going to be the resource and capacity today to give us a status of what's going on with the Widening program in the FP10. Now, I already revealed you. So Thomas, welcome in.
Thank you very much, Neil. Happy to be here.
And before we do anything else, just 2 lines on who you are.
So I think every time I come on this, I have a slightly different job title, but okay. I'm a journalist and editor. I'm writing about science and innovation policy. I work primarily for Science Business in Brussels, and I also do communication activities for EU projects as well.
And then you're also co-hosting this podcast.
And I'm also a co-host of the podcast.
All right, put it on your CV. It's the only one that can do that.
Yeah.
No. Now framing what we're going to talk about. So widening. We've been in the series we've been doing, Thomas. We've been trying to share the wonders of the widening program, why we think it should stay in the framework program. Yeah, that was the discourse. We've been digging into it. We've been having a project in. We've been having a program committee member in, and we've been discussing ourselves. Now, at this stage, we agreed that it would be a good idea to share with the listeners where are we. And since you're a journalist and you're back in science business after a while out, you have both your feet in keeping an eye on these things, and you are the widening capacity on science business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about where it comes from, what's going on, and what's the challenges in the negotiations in relation to this, and then what's coming next and what to keep an eye out for. First block here, we called it the original debate, excellence versus development. So just a fly-in also, it will serve as fly-in to the widening and the discussions around this. So can you fold that out for us?
Yeah, sure. So to give a bit of a refresher on what the widening is, it was first introduced in 2014 under the previous framework program, Horizon 2020. And the idea was to try to help the countries that were lagging behind a little bit in research capacity to catch up to the more advanced countries, so to speak. So the idea was to support them through creating links to already existing consortia or to try to help them network more or improve their grant offices, all these types of things. Then in the planning of Horizon Europe, so the current framework program, there was some debate about whether or not widening fits into the excellence criteria of the framework program. So basically, it's well understood that the framework program should only fund excellent projects. Now, the definition of excellent is a little bit loose, but there's various different criteria that can be applied to it. But basically, they want to fund only the best of the best projects.
Yeah,
so
that's the discourse.
Yeah, some people see the widening as something that's more capacity building and it's not funding excellence. So they think these measures should be funded through other programs. Whereas others say that the widening is funding excellence. It's just that it's hard for these excellent projects to get into Horizon Europe in the first place because they don't have the network or the capacity or that sort of thing. So there's a bit of a debate about that.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a certain element of arrogance to the first argument because it's not really understanding in the first place what is the real issue here, because the real issue is that academic networks are very conservative and they're very difficult to break down, and research networks or research collaborative networks are conservative. And this is what the commission wanted. This is you outlined it, but the deeper rooted causes here is this. Yeah. So this is not because they are not good scientists in Slovakia and in Bulgaria and in Poland. It's nothing to do with it. This has to do with giving them a hand in letting them in to show the excellence they have. This is a key issue here with the widening.
I guess in the best possible scenario, what these widening measures should do is it should be, imagine you have a brilliant scientist working somewhere in Romania and they haven't been able to get involved in the framework program before because they just don't have the knowledge of the application process, or they don't have the network, or they don't have the admin support behind them, or they don't have any of these sorts of things. But the science that they're doing is brilliant, but they're doing that in isolation. The idea of the widening would be to discover that brilliance and help that person get the grants that they deserve from the program. So that's the best case scenario, how it should work. Obviously, there's debate about how effective it is, that sort of thing. I think we'll talk about it at some point today, but there hasn't been yet a full holistic evaluation of how effective the widening measures have been. So that's something that still needs to happen.
Which we talked with guests about this, and the idea is, you can have a quantitative measure of what it does, but this is also, if you ask me, a qualitative assessment that should be done, because this is a matter of attitude. It's a matter of image. It's a matter of image of the program, that it's not something for the filthy few. It's something that does an active effort to facilitate access for the ones that have recently, or it's not so recent anymore, right? They've been in for a while, but so this is a community, the European community. Yeah? We are in this together, and just because collaboration networks has been established in the West and the East because of an artificial blockage, geopolitical wall, it doesn't mean now that it should influence the collaboration networks of the 21st century, right? And that comes down to opening up opportunities as good as you can. You can never force people into collaboration, but at least you sort of administratively put up a frame that gives incentives to open up the networks.
The good news, I guess, is that we are deep in the planning phase of the next framework program, FP10. And so far, this debate about whether or not widening is undermining excellence or not, so far it's not really at the forefront anymore. So I know that there are still people that are making this case out there. And I know that this conversation is still there, but it's very much a background noise at this point. And there is a lot more acceptance that widening measures should be there, need to be there, that we in Europe need to support the entirety of Europe. So that, I mean, that is a bit more prevalent this time round.
Yeah, but also it's not going to stop, Thomas. It's nothing. It's a photograph, right? Everything develops. We have, because of our geopolitical situation and security, suddenly accession of new countries has been is high on the agenda, right? And when they get in, also pre-accession, right? You have access to these kind of funding opportunities. You give them so for them. You will need some sort of facilitation. So, and you cannot just park that in cohesion and just,
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's a good point. That within the next 5 years or so, I do expect there to be new EU member states coming in.
Yeah.
It's like this, and it's not gonna be that long. What is it? 2030 Moldova?
Yeah, Moldova, Albania, Montenegro.
Yeah.
Looking at these countries, I think joining in the next 5 years or so. So.
Let's move into the next block here, FP10, and what's going on in the discussions there. So, what have you picked up?
Right. So let's frame it for what's happening at the moment, basically. In July last year, in 2025, the Commission put forward its proposal for the next framework program, FP10. And there was a few novelties in that regarding the widening. First of all, one thing that they did was the Commission proposed quite a big increase in the budget for the widening. So the current budget under Horizon Europe is around about 3 billion for widening measures. Under the new proposal from the Commission, it's somewhere between 5 and 5.5 billion.
Okay.
The other thing they did was they created a fourth pillar. So the framework program right now has 3 vertical pillars, pillar 1, 2, and 3. Pillar 1 is dedicated to more basic science and research infrastructure. Pillar 2 is large collaborative projects under different themes. And pillar 3 is more of the innovation side of things. The Commission's proposed to add a fourth pillar in the new program, and that would be dedicated to building a European research area.
Okay.
They would also put research infrastructures, research and technology infrastructures there, and they would also put the widening there. So the widening would be in this newly created fourth pillar.
Okay.
So it changes a little bit the structure, but that's kind of the only clues we have just now as to what it will look like. Under the current widening measures, there's, I don't know how many instruments there are now, more than 10 different tools to help the countries, things like teaming or twinning or ERA chairs or hop-on facilities. So there's all these different tools. We don't know yet what tools will be featured under the next program.
Yeah. So all these funding scheme technicalities where you put things up, because called technically. Now it's like this, that you have a lot of the that's in pillar 2, right? So it's sort of integrated into the work programs now.
Yeah, now the widening sits, so under Horizon Europe, the widening sits in this sort of like horizontal pillar. So it's actually sort of outside of the main framework program.
And then it sort of spikes into calls in the different.
No, that is what people want to happen. So there have been people calling for this system to be set up. So they call it. I can't remember how they call it, but it's sort of, instead of having widening as a separate pillar, or a separate program, in each call, you would have a sort of widening element to it. And some people asked for this to happen. I don't see this as being very realistic. So whether or not it's a good idea or not, I'm not commenting on this. I just think that from what I understand from the current debates that are being had at the Commission level and also between the member states, that's not something that's being considered.
So, is there anything coming out about how that's supposed to look like in that fourth pillar?
Not yet. What I can say is, so what has happened with widening is that under the Danish presidency, so the previous presidency, they decided that the widening should not be discussed by research ministers in the planning phase for FP10. So they did what's called in the EU jargon bracketing. So they bracketed the widening, all the decisions to do with the widening, and they said, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to leave that to the overall budget discussions, which would mean that you would have the finance ministers or bigger people, higher up the political chain would be deciding what would happen with widening. So it was kind of pushed to the end. They said, we'll decide other parts of the program. We'll wait till the end. And then everybody else, finance ministers, will decide what happens with widening measures. So this is why not much has been decided when it comes to widening so far.
Which fits with the fact that the Danish government was the first one to come with a position paper 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Stating that they would take the widening out and put it in the cohesion.
Right.
My best guess is this is a strategic decision saying we're not going to discuss this. Probably people would think it's also too controversial if we as a chairmanship with this opinion would start to...
It could be, yeah. So they essentially just kick the can down the road, to use an English expression. They just, we'll deal with it later. What has happened more recently under the Cypriot presidency that is just about to end is they decided that, okay, no, we can talk about some parts of how widening will look. So they unbracketed certain elements of widening. And now behind the scenes, behind closed doors, I know that the research ministers are talking about certain elements of widening. But there are also some parts, and we will get into this in a second. There are also some parts that have remained bracketed, so some parts that are not being talked about. And I can explain what those are if you like.
Yes, please.
Okay. So one of the big changes that the Commission proposed when they put out their proposal last year was they wanted to split the widening into two categories. So they wanted to create transition countries and they wanted to keep widening countries.
Yeah.
Transition countries are the ones that are doing slightly better. So still widening, but they're showing signs of improvement. Yeah. So that under their definition of what would be classified as a transition country, that would be Cyprus, Estonia, Greece, Malta, Portugal, and Slovenia. So
what would be the why would you do that?
I think the logic is that you don't want to be a widening country forever. So there has to be a way out of this, right? Like the ultimate objective of the widening is to not exist anymore. If you know what I mean, like you want.
Yeah. The ideal situation is we don't need a widening program. I understand that, but if you create another category, is this about money? Is this about access to it? That is it then more difficult for the transition countries to get? What is the purpose of it? You understand what I mean? What is the idea?
Maybe what I can do is I can explain how a transition country would be chosen, right? So how you become a transition country.
Yeah.
And it might have some context for this. So what they said is that if a country has a score above 75% of the EU average on what is called the Innovation Scoreboard Index.
Yeah.
So this is an EU index that classifies how innovative countries are.
Yeah.
So if your score is above 75% of the EU average, that would be one tick in the box for you becoming a transition country. So it shows that you're good at innovation, right? The other thing is a very complex sounding metric that is called, if a country has a positive relative financial return per gross national income under Horizon Europe, then that's the other box that they need to tick to become a transition country. So what that means in normal language, in normal
You're
English,
doing too well.
is basically if a country is good at winning, or if the institutes or the researchers in a country are good at winning Horizon grants compared to the size of the country and that country's economy, then they get a sort of tick box. Do you know what I mean? So, for example, we don't expect Estonia to be as good at winning grants as Poland because of the size of the economies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Poland is massive. Estonia is really small. Mm-hmm. So it has this sort of relative aspect where if Estonia is, for its size and economy, doing pretty well at winning Horizon grants, then it has a positive relative financial return for the program.
Yeah.
So these are the two things. You need to be good on the innovation scoreboard, and you need to be relatively good at winning Horizon grants compared to the size of your country's economy. Right? So if you meet these categories, and according to the EU, there are these 6 countries that fall into this, then you're going to become a transition country with the hope that pretty soon you won't need widening measures anymore.
Well, I still lack to understand what it means then to be put in that category. Is it gonna be deep? Is it be more difficult? Are you putting bottlenecks for them? Is it easier for widening countries to get funding? Are they blocked from entering into proposals? Widening? Are they going to be transition calls and widening calls, or what? Because there must be, what is the consequence of being a transition country? Yeah.
So we don't know.
No, they don't want to tell because.
I think the reason that we don't know is, I think genuinely the idea from the Commission was probably they want to phase countries out of being widening countries, and this was their way to do it. But we don't really know what the implications of this are yet, and because this discussion was bracketed, we haven't had any progress on this, so we still don't know what it means really.
Okay, so dear listener out there,
something is coming along.
We don't know.
Do you want me to go? I can go more into the weeds here because it gets more complicated.
Excellent.
So
that doesn't sound like the Commission at all.
Let me take you further into the complexities.
Are we moving into the conditionality debate now?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Then it's a fully new block. So there's a scalar here. So, all right. So what is the next? Let's go down the spiral. Of depths of complexity. Help me here. So what is the conditionality debate? What's going on?
All right. Okay. So the one thing that the Commission wrote into their proposal was all this thing about the transition countries, right? So that was one element. The other element that they specified in their proposal was something called a sort of conditionality. I'm not sure the exact language they used, but it was basically what it means is that from the year 2030 onwards, so that would be about 2 years after the next framework program starts, countries, widening countries or transition countries, would no longer have access to certain capacity building measures. So these are measures that are written into different calls, for example, and it could be related to, like improving HR or improving certain grant administrative support. So there's various capacity building measures that are funded through the widening. But from 2030 onwards, countries that let me get this.
Thomas is now checking his notes.
I
love this. I'm just painting the picture for the listener. He now has to read in depth, sit and pick. Oh, I hope I commission. I love the commission to be on an episode like this. It would be so fantastic for them to explain why they are doing these kind of things.
So we're ready. I found the part of my notes.
Okay.
From 2030 onwards, capacity building measures will be restricted to widening countries that have increased their real expenditure of public investment in research and development in the latest known year compared to the year prior to it.
Got it.
So this is related to, they want to notch. This is public administration. This is my university study. You use regulation to notch development you want. So they want to punish countries that are lowering their public R&D investments, and this is typically what goes to universities on block, so public research organizations, and the access to funding and what do you say, research capacity building, that you do from public side. So so this is basically what they want to do.
Exactly. So if countries, so there's been a long-standing target set by the EU, which is that EU countries should increase their spending on research and development to the equivalent of 3% of their GDP. Right.
Yeah.
There's probably only about 5 or 6 countries in the EU that have actually met that target, and no other countries have. Right. So there's over 20 that haven't met that target.
Mm-hmm.
It is the case that widening countries generally, not always, but generally, are spending the least on research and development on a national level, right? So this is part of the argument, because what some people say is that there wouldn't be a gap. We wouldn't need the widening measures if national governments just spent more on research and development, right? So if flick a switch and tomorrow Bulgaria comes, Bulgaria is maybe a bad example due to their unstable politics, but let's say Bulgaria comes along and they say, from tomorrow, we're spending 3% of our GDP on research and development.
Yeah.
What some people think is that would solve everything. That would mean that, overnight Bulgaria would become this fantastic sort of place with a great thriving research and innovation ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't need any more support from the EU. Everything would just fall into place and be fine. So that's kind of the argument. And what the EU are saying is that we want to encourage that type of behavior, where countries are proactively increasing their research and development budgets. The problem with this, I think, and it's quite an interesting one. Do you know which country wins the most widening grants?
We already discussed it in early episodes, but I don't remember. It's Germany?
It's Germany, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't need it.
The interesting thing about this is that Germany could drastically decrease its R&D spending. And it would still, because it's not a widening country, have access to capacity building measures.
Yeah.
But you could have a country like Romania who keeps a stable spending on R&D, and from 2030 onwards would lose access to capacity building measures because they haven't increased it, right? So it's punishing widening countries and it's not punishing non-widening countries.
Okay. The editorial opinion from the grant is that you need equal measures, right? You can put these measures on widening, but then it needs to be measures for everybody. There would need to be, if you don't want, because what happens, it's very simple. If you introduce this for the countries that you want to lift up, but you don't put an equal sort of, I know they're not widening, so you will not punish them in a widening context. You cannot punish Germany or Denmark or Netherlands in the widening context, but you can punish in other ways. So there should be some sort of, okay, now for the framework program, future framework program, we will have to look at some sort of measures if you drop below this. And it should be for all 27 member states, full stop. No, but it's like this. And for widening countries, this is the consequence. Can be this, right? And for non-widening countries, this is a consequence. There's a consequence. Then you do whatever you want, but not. This is just. It's not nice.
Yeah, it's an interesting condition. I think there is work to be done on this. I don't think this is in the final form, and I imagine that there will be quite a lot of debates about.
But the good thing is that you have a lot of widening countries, right? So they have enough votes to handle this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that those are the main sort of proposals that we can outline from the Commission's an initial proposal.
Okay. So let's move into where the political negotiations they stand now. So now you've been sort of sharing with us the different things that are on the table, the discussions and so on. So what's the photograph of the situation right now?
So, where are we? The EU were the member states, so the Council, were supposed to come up with what's called a partial general approach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the sort of initial position on FP10. And they were supposed to have agreed on that already. They have not yet. So the member states are still debating their position on FP10. As far as I know, the Cyprus presidency, are still crossing their fingers that they will have this partial general approach by the end of June when their presidency ends.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next few weeks, because we're speaking in June, in the next few weeks, we might get a partial general agreement approach on FP10. And in that, we will see a little bit more about where the member states have come to an agreement on widening.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get that, we are in a bit of limbo. So I have spoken to representatives of member states about this, and while they are discussing certain aspects of widening, they are very much just waiting for this partial general approach to come out before going further into the details. So, we're essentially at a bit of an impasse. We're waiting for the member states.
If we zoom out a little bit on the whole process, when is this supposed to be ready?
Well, soon. So we should have this intermediary position now. And once we have that, it will be opened back up for further debate from Commission, from Parliament, from Council. So they will all continue to debate various elements of this. And it has to be wrapped up, ideally, before the end of next year.
When is it that the new work program is supposed to start?
Well, it should be January 2028.
Yeah, so that's a year and a half from now.
Right.
Yeah. And these things needs to be settled by next summer. Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, what happened under Horizon Europe was the first work programs were issued late because of delays in getting to this agreement. So it could be.
And they had to move the deadlines because it was the deadlines were literally like a couple of months after, or 1 month. I remember they had to move things a little bit because Yeah.
So in any case, we do expect there to be a lot more information coming this year because we will have at least an idea of what the council position is. And I think once we have this council position, we will then start the bickering and the real sort of negotiations will start to kick off.
Yeah.
So from the latter half of this year onwards, it will start to get.
It's cracking time. Yeah.
Yeah.
We move into cracking time because it's not that long. It's a long diplomatic process. There are lots of back, and a year is not that long in that context. So yeah, it is moving into some difficult. Some diplomats will be working overtime. This presidency we're stepping into, who is actually taking it?
The next presidency is Ireland.
That's Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay.
And after Ireland, it will be Lithuania. So both these countries will play quite an important role in the shaping of the next program.
Yeah, Lithuania is a widening country.
Yeah.
Anything else on the negotiations, budget discussions?
I think that's all. Maybe this would be not to include in the recording. I don't know if you can edit me out here, but there is a.
Is there anything else you want to share on where the political negotiations are?
I think that's all.
Yeah.
I think that's all.
So maybe in some 6 months' time we can do an update where we also know more about the budget, because that's what everybody. So that's the details about how is it, where is it going to be? It's going to access the money. Can we continue? What will happen for our stakeholders when they want to access, and what's the amount? Yeah. But that we will know more. We'll know more about that in 6 months' time.
What I would say, maybe just to sort of sum up a little bit, is that this debate that we were talking about at the start of this episode, where there was, some people saying we don't want widening, some people saying we do want widening, whatever.
Yeah.
This debate is really less prevalent now, and generally, so the big majority, and there are still some dissenting voices, but the big majority have accepted that we need widening measures. So I fully expect there to be a widening element in FP10. The exact shape of it, I don't know. The exact budget, I don't know. But I fully expect it to be there.
Yeah, it's dead. The idea that it should be moved to the cohesion fund zone, it's dead.
Yeah, I think so.
The opinion doesn't leave. It's just a matter of where the majority goes, and that seems to be the case that we've been discussing here, right? That you've been sharing was. We're moving towards the end here. Of course, we need a section on next steps. So what's coming up? What should people keep an eye out for?
Do you know what I would say? Well, we have to wait for this partial general approach, which we will get soon. One thing I would point readers or interested people towards is that the European Parliament committee called STOA. So it's the Panel for the Future of Science and Technology Options Assessment.
Is there a link?
Yeah, I can.
If there's a link, I will share it on the episode site so people go and check themselves.
So there's a paper written by STOA, specifically by an MEP, and this sets out some ideas for how the widening should look in the future. And one of the conclusions was it would be better if there was a lot more tailored or bespoke approach to help each country. So rather than just a set, catch-all group of measures, each country would be supported in the way that would help it the best. So that was one recommendation from an MEP. It got favorable, I think, as far as I can see, it was favorably received. But this is a political question. I don't know how seriously member states would take this, but I think it's worth checking that out. And if listeners are interested, I interviewed the MEP about this paper back in January. So you can also read my article on it. And I will
sure put a link to the article there. also. Sure. So for the next 6 months, is there any periods where people should be aware specifically?
Not specifically, no. We will have to wait for the news from the council.
And the timeline for that, are they supposed to, do they have a deadline?
Well, this partial general report should have been published already. So
Okay.
the fact that it isn't means that it should be with us soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Thomas, I think that's it. Is there anything we want to share with the listeners before we shut this down? Basically, there's some tough criteria and suggestions on the table. We went through them. There's some things we don't know. What is it? What does it mean to be a transition country? Some suggestions, and then you have the conditions. If you don't spend, we cut you. If you don't spend in your R&D. But things needs to be more concrete as we get closer, right? So I guess that's what we will be waiting for, where these discussions will end.
Yeah, I think the conclusion is at the moment there are possibly more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But that's where we are. That's where we are.
And then the fourth pillar. Yeah, the fourth pillar is also Pandora's box that can open up a lot of questions.
One thing we didn't even mention was the relationship between the Next Framework Program and the European Competitiveness Fund.
Yes.
Which is also a question. There were some calls for there to be a widening aspect to the European Competitiveness Fund as well. That strikes me as a bit unrealistic, but yeah, I mean, these are all questions that will be answered in the coming year and a half.
Yeah, it's that's for an FP10 update episode.
Yeah.
No, Thomas, thanks for joining me. I'm just going to land the plane. So thanks for listening to the end, dear listener. Go and check out my website, thegrant.eu. A lot of things are happening. I'm doing a lot. I have created a new podcast concept that you can check out, Explain Science, science communication concept, where I invite project owners and proposal owners in to share about concrete research and innovation they're doing, and why it's necessary to do that, and why it's a challenge to do that. So check it out. I only have one episode, but it's would be a continuous effort. So if you have something there that you think could be a candidate for that, reach out. We have a conversation. Otherwise, if you have it, we have the Widening series here. Go and check it out. This is I don't even remember, it's the 4th or 5th episode. There's some information there for you guys if you're interested in what we've been talking about here. And of course, you have tons on EU funding there. So check it out on the podcast universe. And of course, go and connect with Thomas and myself on LinkedIn. That's where the fun happens. That's where the flow is, especially for mine, podcast related, of course. That's where my marketing runs. It's also where I pick up my guests. Go and like The Grant page. I have passed 500 followers now, so it's slowly building up. Also, of course, on my website. Go and, if you want to support me, if you like what I do, a way to do that, the most important way, is to fill out the online form to join my email list. It's the best way to support an independent podcaster. That's that. Thanks, Thomas. Always a pleasure to have you around.
Thank you.
Let's say goodbye to the listeners. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Thomas' LinkedIn profile, plus, of course, a link to Science Business where he works. You'll also find a link to the STOA panel and the article Thomas mentioned in the episode. Next week, it is time to have a look at how regions work with EU funding. You can, indeed, look forward to that.